The weather is heating up in Miami, and so is recruiting. So let's head down to Coral Gables and talk some Canes recruiting. The Canes got a pair of elite wide receivers. They just locked in a surprise midweek visit to Miami. So I got Cane Sport insider Azubi Charles on this video. He's going to take us behind the scenes of a few major recruitments. But before we get started, hit subscribe to the On3 Recruit channel. We're talking Miami recruiting all offseason. Go on, hit subscribe for me, please. All right. Bring on Azubi Charles at Cane Sport. Now, before we hit on the pair of in-state wideouts that just made that surprise official visit, let's talk Elijah Griffin, the nation's #1 defensive lineman, was in Coral Gables last weekend for an official visit. Steve Wiltfong had great things to say coming out of that one, but you are down there on the ground. What are you hearing, and where do the Canes stand for Elijah Griffin?
So this past weekend went great for the Hurricanes and Griffin, and a lot of guys on that staff are really, really happy how things went. This was his second time down in Coral Gables, but the first time with his entire family, and they loved everything about Miami, seeing it for the first time. One of the things Griffin loves about the Hurricanes and that staff is Coach Jason Taylor and Joe Salavea. Both of those guys had lengthy careers in the NFL, and he believes, their experience playing in the league, they can get him there, which is his ultimate goal, after playing college football. Another interesting thing that happened during that OV was Griffin actually spoke with former 5-star defensive lineman Justin Scott, who was almost in his exact shoes last cycle. Justin kind of told him his story and why he ultimately chose Miami over a lot of good programs. We know Justin was committed to Ohio State, but kind of flipped that commitment towards the end, and now he's a Hurricane. Griffin said that really stood out to him, and he said, hey, playing alongside him wouldn't be a bad idea, and they'd make for a great duo in the trenches for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, Justin Scott last year, Armando Blunt as well. Now they're trying to make a play for Elijah Griffin, the nation's #1 defensive lineman. Got to love the way Miami takes these big swings at these powerful defensive linemen. But they're not the only ones we're here to talk about. A pair of elite in-state wide receivers, Vernell Brown and Jamie French, they are currently on campus. They set a Tuesday visit midweek. Now, they were going to possibly be on campus the week before, but that OT7, 7-on-7 tournament was being held in the state of Florida. They participated in that. So now Miami gets them midweek all alone. What's the significance of this visit, of them visiting together as well?
I think this is almost an ideal situation for Miami, getting both of these guys in on a midweek visit. I feel like this gives Mario Cristobal and his staff the opportunity to focus all in on these guys and, not trying to have to juggle, 11 or 12 guys on an OV and focus on, 2 guys who are pretty much 1A and 1B on the top of their wide receiver recruiting board. Coach Kevin Beard has said great things about these 2 guys, and, the whole staff is very, very high on them. And getting those 2 guys in at the same time, you can kind of pitch them, hey, we can keep this thing going togetend. We saw what you guys just did this weekend at SFE for winning the OT7 national championship. Let's continue this down to Coral Gables. So Miami's going to be all in and focus on these 2 guys, and I'm excited to see what happens coming out of this midweek visit.
Yeah, and 2 weeks ago when they were here in Nashville for the On3 Elite Series, we saw them move together almost like teammates. And yes, they are teammates on 7-on-7, but Jamie French is from Jacksonville, and Vernell Brown is from Orlando, Jones High School and Mandarin High School. So they're not exactly teammates. It almost feels like a package deal, but we know it's not. There are a couple teams that overlap their recruitments, and Miami's a big one. Let's talk Vernell Brown first. Who do you view as Miami's biggest competition heading into this visit?
I think that's got to be Ohio State for Vernell Brown. We all know Coach Hartline has had a great track record of landing, big time wide receiver, and especially, doing his thing down in the Sunshine State. But for Brown, Miami offensive coordinator has kind of, told him his vision for him. He kind of sees him playing, that kind of Tank Dell role that he had in Houston when he coached him, and a Tavon Austin role when he had him at West Virginia, which is kind of, the thing that's keeping, Miami in the mix with Vernell, among a lot of other things. But he has a plan laid out for him. He's told him that plan, and it's proven with guys like Tank Dell and Tavon Austin, like I just mentioned. But I do think Ohio State is going to be a team to watch, and obviously Florida with all his ties to that program, his dad playing there, his sister running track there currently, and a bunch of other family members, playing in Gator country. But those 2 schools right now, I think, are Miami's 2 stiffest competitors for Vernell Brown.
Yeah, and then Vernell Brown will take a couple more visits, and he's going to make a decision in July. So we're technically maybe 5 or 6 weeks away from Vernell Brown deciding. All right, let's move on to wide receiver Jamie French, the 5-star out of Jacksonville, Florida. He's coming in, and whenever he takes a visit lately, he's kind of named a leader coming out of that. He's had Texas as a leader. He's had LSU either in the 1 or 2 spot, and Miami has always consistently been there, maybe in that 3 spot, but they've consistently been there. Do you think that we could be hearing about Miami leading when this visit ends?
Yeah, things go well. Like you mentioned, when French leaves the school, they kind of continue to climb in his
Yeah.
recruiting. And, Miami's always been in that group of the top schools. And, they're just letting him know, hey, you do not have to leave the Sunshine State to succeed. We have everything that you need down here. And he's hearing it out. Miami
Mhm.
was his first offer ever. And I know the staffs have changed a little bit with Coach Cristobal taking over, but he still holds that very, very highly. And he loves, Coach Kevin Beard, Coach Cristobal. They're making him feel welcome in Miami. But like you mentioned, those first two schools, LSU and Texas, I feel like they're going to be hard to beat. But, Coach Cristobal and that staff aren't going to give up anytime soon. French is expected to announce on the 30th, so we'll see, how this visit goes, and we'll know a little bit more about everything coming out of it on Thursday.
Yeah, and even if French decides on the 30th, I mean,
yeah, it's going to be a wild one to the end.
Right, right. I think, he still has visits set to Tennessee next weekend, and then he'll finish June with a official visit to Texas. And then, like you said, could be a summer decision. We'll see on that. Miami, though, they are cooking. First commitment of the summer came over the weekend. Birmingham, Alabama, 3-star corner Timothy Merritt jumped on board. So obviously my next question is, who could be next for the Canes? Because we know it's going to be a busy summer.
Yeah, so this upcoming weekend, we're set to host, guys like DJ Pickett and Dallas Wilson for their third OVP. I'm looking at another prospect, a local guy, Miami Central defensive back, Amari Wallace, who I think the Hurricanes are in a great spot for. He's a local guy who Miami's been recruiting since every time he visits Miami. He just says great things about that program. He's going to be the guy I watch this weekend, and I think Miami can continue that run of cornerbacks because they're really focusing on amping up that secondary this cycle. So he's one of the guys that I'm watching a lot coming out this weekend, and I do think if things go really, really well, I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls a trigger and ends up committing to Miami after this weekend's all said and done.
Yeah, a huge weekend on tap for the Canes. Go to canesport.com. Go check it out. You guys do an incredible job of not only covering recruiting, but the football team as well. Go check it out, Canesport. So now, Miami fans, talk to me. How we feeling about Elijah Griffin? Comment section below. What about these two elite in-state wide receivers? And also, who do you guys think will be the next commitment for the Miami Hurricanes? Tap in, comment section below.